I'm James O'Grady, also known as WhatHoSnorkers on Twitch and occasionally on YouTube, and I've been tagged by Rose Tinted Spectrum to answer 7 questions about the 90s. This is the 1990s, not the 1890s, so I thought I'd dress up in my authentic 90s gear. This is the smoking jacket I got in Venice in 1997. The mirrored sunglasses I wear on my videos a lot, I all had those from the 90s, and a cravat I wore one at university in the 90s. So, first question please.
Favourite cartoon you own on DVD?
So, in the 90s I was a bit too old for cartoons and a bit too young. Big on cartoons in the 80s, loved them. In the 2000s got more into Studio Ghibli stuff. So, thinking about cartoons that I own and also like, we're probably going to go with Porco Rosso. I like other Studio Ghibli films as well. Some of those are from the 70s and the 80s and the 2000s. This is from 1994? Is it? 1992 apparently. It's rather splendid. It's a Italian fighter pilot from the First World War who for some reason is magically transformed into a pig. Excellent stuff. Next question please.
Sega or Nintendo?
Well, it's got to be Sega. It's got to be Sega. Absolutely Sega every single time. I didn't own a Nintendo as a kid. I saw one briefly for a few weeks. But as a kid, I was given by my mum, or we were given by my mum for Christmas. I'll get this thing to turn on. A Sega Master System 2, which is of course a splendid, splendid thing. And when it turns on, that sound is the sound of pure joy. So it's always going to be Sega. Never owned a Mega Drive, never owned a 16-bit system. It was Sega all the way for me. Next question please.
Favourite console video game?
So, I had access to, well, I owned 2 consoles in the 90s, the Sega Master System, and right at the end of the 90s I got a Sony PlayStation, which I bought with my first ever tax rebate. However, that will be the last 6 months of the decade, so I'm not going to include that. I had access to a Nintendo Entertainment System for a few weeks, but I think I'm going to say it's going to be a game on the Master System, which I really rather like. Alien 3. It's a platform-based shooter. It's similar to the one on the Mega Drive, slightly less graphics, but it's rather splendid. You run around shooting far too many aliens, rescuing prisoners, great soundtrack, choice of weapons, flamethrower for the win. Next question please.
Favourite comic?
Comics, tricky one. Loved comics in the 80s because I was younger. I'm 43 now. In the 90s, I didn't really get a lot of comics. In the 2000s, I started reading comics. So, out of comics from the 90s, although I didn't read them until I moved to Norwich in the 2000s, I'm probably going to say Sin City, because they were really rather good. But I didn't read them at the time. Next question.
Favourite pro wrestler?
No, never really much into wrestling. In the 80s it was on the telly with Big Daddy and that. In the 90s, not really that bothered. If I had to pick a wrestler of the 90s, it would probably have to be Hulk Hogan, just because he was very famous. He was in Gremlins 2 and in the film Suburban Commando, which wasn't bad. That'd be him really. Next question.
Favourite song and music video?
Nice one. So, my favourite song and music video would be, of the 90s, Enigma, Sadness, Part 1. That's the one with the Gregorian chant. And the French lass going, and the video's of some bloke depressed who dreams of being a monk in a monastery, and it's all really ruined and rather lovely. I used to like listen to it when I worked at the supermarket. Really rather nice. Final question please.
Favourite live action TV show and episode?
So, of the 90s, favourite live action TV show would be Red Dwarf. favourite episode is one I keep quoting in real life to this day, Back to Reality. That's the one where the crew come across a crashed spacecraft that's been destroyed by a despair squid and then wake up to find themselves back in reality, having lived in a virtual reality video game of Red Dwarf, and they're met by the attendant Andy, played by Timothy Spall, who has the wonderful line, which I like to use for people who don't get my cultural references. Esperanto, I can't do the accent, Esperanto, oh, it's a blatant clue in it. Esperanto, hope, hope defeats despair. Blatant clue, isn't it? Blatant, which I like to use quite a lot. Yes, that one. It's just genius. Really, really well done. So, those are my 7 questions about the 90s. I now have to tag 2 more people. So, I'm going to tag the most amazing arcade game player ever, the man who was the inspiration for the computer warrior from the Eagle. That is the one, the only, OneCreditClassics. But also, a man who makes very interesting videos, which I thoroughly recommend, HDE's totally unoriginal gaming show. The D is lowercase. Enjoy!